So I want to say Ridley Scott could have made a much, 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 much worse movie. This movie could be so much more terrible, and I am very happy that it is just bad.
Welcome to Bible Boys, a podcast where two ex-evangelical siblings and an ex-Catholic non-sibling watch Christian media and either praise or condemn it. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Michael.
This week, we swing by Jerusalem with the 2005 Ridley Scott crusader drama, Kingdom of Heaven. Before we make our audience into knights, please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, like and comment on our video, and follow us on Twitter at The Bible Boys. Well, it's finally come to this. We've been threatening for a long time to talk about the Crusades, gentlemen, and today is that day.
I am so glad I took that class on the Crusades 4 years ago now, so I am completely qualified to discuss this.
Yeah, I mean, you both have seen this movie before, right? Do you want to mind talking about your history with it?
Yeah, this is what I would call a granddad special, and that's one of the 5 movies that our grandfather showed us from age 0 to now, that just on repeat. Just one of those like, hey, look, people die and wear armor in this. Fun. And specifically the forest scene, which we will discuss, like the ambush, I think I've seen a billion times. I don't know why that scene stands out, but like I remember conversations I had with my brother about that scene where we like made fun of it even as little kids.
Great, good.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this film so many times, so just for our audience, I'd like you to know, I am the one that did not watch the director's cut. I told the boys that my time was too valuable for a 3-hour movie and I wouldn't watch it. So I found a version that had Arabic subtitles, and that is the version I watched. And none of this film it didn't even feel like I forgot anything about it, to be honest. I feel like I could have actually just shaken around my head a little and brought up some memories, because I think I've watched this film almost as many times as I've watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Wow. Okay.
So happy I watched the director's cut, because otherwise I would be in that same exact like location as you, Michael.
Yeah, we'll get to it at the end, but I think the reviews of the director's cut are slightly better than the reviews of the theatrical cut. So, yeah, me and Josh might have a little bit more weird details that Michael might not be able to add on to, but I think the overall story is pretty straightforward. Basically, it follows the story of one Balian who travels to Jerusalem, defends the city against Saladin, and negotiates its safe turnover to the Saracen army. And we're going to be talking about how he gets there. It's a fun romp. It features all your favorite actors. Got Liam Neeson, Orlando Bloom, Eva Green. It's a good time. Let's get into it. Basically, we open on France, 1184. It's been 100 years since the Christians took Jerusalem. And we get this establishing shot of like this woman being buried. We learn that she has died by suicide. And some people squabble over her body. A shady dude takes a golden cross off her body, and they chop her head off.
Do you know who that shady man was?
I do not. I mean, I know who his character was. I don't know who the actor is.
Martin Sheen.
No shit.
I've got like 3 more of those where I'm going to be like, you know who this actor is?
Great. Good.
I was just remarking to myself in the opening shot, like, Orlando Bloom really got typecast after Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, Will Turner?
Yeah, basically.
Is that
we
you?
have a hot white guy with long hair who is good at swords.
Not only that, a blacksmith.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
He's
shit.
also a blacksmith in Pirates of the Caribbean. If Legolas starts making nails, I'm going to lose my mind.
Honestly, if you just changed Prince Caspian's casting to him, it would really be, like, quite the moment.
Michael's out here making big changes that I'm okay with.
Don't break our NDA, Michael. We can't reveal that we've been contracted to make the reboot of the Narnia series.
Surprise, I'm the White Witch.
That was part of your contract, of course.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm one of the background satyrs. I have to spend a lot of time in makeup.
And Tilda Swinton's playing every other role.
It's just Michael, Josh, and Tilda Swinton. The best casting.
She's paying us to do this.
That's the thing. She is financing the whole thing.
Yep.
Thank you, Tilda.
Thanks, Tilda. This podcast brought to you by Miss Swinton. We get Liam Neeson, who is playing a man named Godfrey, who comes to this village in France, and he's like, hey, I'm looking for the blacksmith. And they're like, oh, the blacksmith's in jail because he's possessed because his wife died by suicide, and he's sad about that. So we put him in jail. So, good to see that mental health has really come a long way in 900 years. We get a couple shots of Balian, who is the blacksmith, Orlando Bloom. He's very sad, but eventually he gets let out of prison because apparently this guy, Godfrey, wants him out. Apparently he's going to be very important apparently he's going to go do the Crusades.
He's also the local baron's brother, which is explained in the director's cut. And that adds like eight extra minutes and a slightly less confusing scene later.
I feel like might not even make a slightly less confusing scene, just given the time versus the payoff.
Yeah, they spent like the first half hour of this movie in the director's cut is just them like dealing with all this weird drama in France. But yeah, so Godfrey goes out to meet Balian because he got over his depression over his wife and child dying, and he's working at the forge. And Godfrey's like, "Hey, Balian, surprise, I'm your dad." And Balian's like, "I don't give a shit." And Godfrey's like, "Well, will you at least make horseshoes for me?" He's like, "Yeah, I guess so." And he offers to take Balian to go on the Crusades. And he's like, "Hey, I have this kingdom called Ebeline, or not a kingdom, a barony, technically." And he's like, "I will, you'll inherit that if you come with me." And Balian's like, "Yeah, I'm depressed, so I'm not probably going to take you up on that pap. And Godfrey's like, "Well, you'll never see me again if you don't do this." And Balian's like, "Great, bye." And Godfrey leaves. And then his shitty brother, who stole the cross necklace from his wife's body, later on comes up and he's like, "Why didn't you just leave, dude? I arranged everything for you. It would have been great." And Balian's like, "Well, you just wanted all my shit, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I did, but like, it would have been fine. You would have had a cool life. But now, if you go on the Crusades still, there's still time. You can, replace your wife's place in hell, because she did die. She did kill herself. And that's a mortal sin. And then he says, like, I don't know what she's going to be doing there without a head. And that really pisses Orlando Bloom off, understandably. He notices that his brother has the necklace, and he's like working on a sword at the time that his brother is saying all these shitty things to him. So he takes the sword that's still like hot, glowing hot, and just like rams it through this dude's chest, and then puts him on the forge fire and sets him on fire, and then it burns his whole forge down. It's a wild scene, but also it's like very cool. So I don't care that it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
It just seems like overkill. Like, okay.
I am a sucker for the scene of, it's in every fight scene in medieval times where someone is on fire and they run away like, "Ah, ah, ah." I love it. Every time I see them, I'm like, yeah!
Yeah, it's great. Anyway, that is a murder, so Balian does have to leave. So he goes out to find Godfrey, and he like meets Godfrey on the road, and Godfrey's like, "Hey, you're not going to kill me, are you, man?" And he's like, "No, I did a murder, and now I have to go get my sins forgiven." And he's like, "Okay, sure, fine. You can come with me."
We need to go through the interesting cast and characters that are the other Crusaders along on the ride here with Liam Neeson.
By all means.
You've got the German, who is a big dude with a big bushy mustache.
He's a berserker. He's just a berserker.
Yeah.
And I believe they described the other individual as a Moorish soldier.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one black person in this movie.
Yes. You've got the idiot who likes to piss upstream. And then you've got the one guy that survives who is the defense against the dark arts teacher in the third Harry Potter.
Weird. Okay. Yeah, that's wild. This sequence, because we're about to get to the forest sequence that you mentioned earlier, Josh. I thought it was so strange in the director's cut that they spent like 5 minutes kind of giving us the backstories to all these characters and like kind of getting us invested in them. I was like, okay, yeah, we've got a kind of a doofus who's peeing upstream, and we have like the cool German dude. And then immediately following this scene, there's like a 7-minute battle where they all get killed.
So, okay, that actually is a reality TV trope where if someone's going to be eliminated in a competition show, they highlight them first. So whenever I see that in film, in any media, I'm like, oh, this person's not long for this world. Like, I shouldn't get attached. Because they're just telling me this story, so then I can feel bad because they otherwise have no exposition. So the version I watched, it's like, who gives a shit? All these people are dead. Version you guys watched, it's like, oh, they have backstories and histories. Don't let them emotionally manipulate you. They'll try to do it with backstories and music.
This was just the producers trying to give Balian the best cut.
We've also, like, there's an important detail that I believe the director's cut goes into way too much detail for, in that the Baron that they had just visited, Godfrey's brother, and Godfrey's nephew are like, yo, Godfrey don't got an heir. If he dies, that kind of gets circled back into our land. So that's part of the reason why the nephew went to go get Balian and then was like, oh, cool, I'll just murk everyone here. Because if I kill my uncle and it's cool with the Pope and law, then I get his land.
Yes, that's a good point, and I didn't even pick up on that. But, like, yeah, that basically the reason they, Godfrey's band gets attacked is because not only they essentially want to get Balian because he did do a murder, but also, like Josh said, so that way the other guy who he's related to will inherit that land. So that does make a lot of sense.
And we cannot move past the most amazing line in any movie that has ever been said.
So Liam Neeson and Orlando Bloom are doing a training montage, and like Orlando Bloom's hand is hurt, and he's like, "Oh man, I can't train with a damaged hand." And then Godfrey says,
"I once fought 3 days with an arrow through my testicle."
It's really good. Thanks, Liam Neeson. He's got a certain set of skills.
Wonder
and one testicle.
I wonder if Liam Neeson looked at this and went, "What the fuck?" Or if he was like happy about it, because I would be like, "What the fuck?"
In my head canon, this was ad-libbed, and he was like, "Listen, I'm in this movie for 15 minutes. If you take this out, I walk. This is art. I made that line. Give me a writer's credit."
I agree. I think that Liam Neeson was like, this movie's a little dour. Let's add some flavor to it.
If you read, as I have, all of the like historical takes on this movie, every single one of them mentions that line.
Wait, why?
Because they're like, someone probably wouldn't live with a testicle in their life.
Yeah, he would have gotten mad, infected, and like fucking gangrene through his whole nervous system. Of course he would have, but that's a funny line.
Which I am now going to request, if anyone is into modding, please add that to the Skyrim Guard. I used to be an adventurer like you until I took an arrow to the testicle and fought for 3 days.
I feel like someone has made that mod.
Good.
Yeah.
So anyway, unfortunately, Godfrey is injured in this fight, and he's got like an arrow in his ribs, and it's pretty clear he's gonna linger, but he's dying. But they do manage to at least get to, I think it's Messina in Italy. And we get a lot
because of Godfrey's good advice in case Balian ever wanted to go to Jerusalem, go to where they speak Italian, and then keep going until they speak something else.
Which is really funny.
Liam Neeson has all the good lines.
Listen, he did great work in this film. Yeah, we get some like we are introduced to the antagonist of this film, a Templar by the name of Guy, and essentially he's married to the woman who is the sister of the current king of Jerusalem. So once that king dies, he will become king of Jerusalem, and like that's going to be a big plot point in a bit. He basically just like walks up to Orlando Bloom. He's like, "Oh, you're not a real noble. You suck." And then Orlando Bloom like takes his cool riding stick, and he's like, "Yeah, well, no, I don't." And that's basically it. We just kind of get that set up. We also do get a bit where Godfrey is talking to Balian about like, what he should do when he gets to Jerusalem. And we get the very important line. Balian's like, what would a king want with a man like me? Because Godfrey tells him he has to serve the king of Jerusalem. And then Godfrey tells him, he wants a better world than has ever been seen. A kingdom of conscience, a kingdom of heaven. And then we get the title card. Boom, boom, boom.
He said the title! Oh!
Yeah, it's stupid.
There's so much shit that is... I get why the director cut it.
Yeah, I don't know that this film needed a director's cut, but it's fine.
And then they sail to Jerusalem and nothing bad happens on the boat ride. It goes perfectly. Nothing happens whatsoever.
That's not true. If you'll remember, the ship sinks. And Balian is just left alone with the horse. Wait, one thing that happens before that, though, is that Balian is called to Godfrey, and there's like a weird secret ceremony going on. They administer him to an oath. They're like, hey, this is your oath to protect the people and to always be a just knight, and you're now the Baron of Ebeline. Congrats. And they're like, that's your oath. And then they fucking deck him across the face. And he's like, and that's so you'll remember it, which is also extremely good.
That's actually in what they do when you work at a Toys R Us. They make you do an oath, and then Jeffrey the giraffe comes out and just backhands you.
That's actually just what happened to the employees of Toys R Us back in 2018.
As one of them, yes, that is exactly what happened.
Yeah, that's after that point, Godfrey sadly dies, and we don't get any more of Liam Neeson. But yeah, so Balian wakes up in the middle of the desert. There's a horse which he manages to capture. The horse, he and the horse are drinking from this like stream in this oasis, and he sees a pair of Muslim men. One of them is like, "Hey, my master says that's his horse." And then Orlando Bloom has one of the best lines in this movie, which is, "I pulled this horse from the sea."
Didn't.
Pulled this horse from the
Found
sea.
it on the beach. That is so different than pulling it from the sea.
Yeah, but it's really good. The one of them, the man who's walking is like, okay, hey, he has the man on the horse is like, okay, well, I'm gonna have my he's like, my master's gonna fight you now. So the guy on the horse, charges Balian. Balian does some cool sword fighting tricks and kills him. He's like, all right, this other guy who's remaining, he's like, all right, now you have to take me to Jerusalem. And he's like, okay, cool, I'm in your debt, I guess. They go to Jerusalem. It's pretty fine. Before Balian goes into the rest of the city, he gives the man his horse, and he's like, this horse isn't very great, and you seem like a cool guy, so Godspeed. And he says, your enemies will know your worth before they ever see your face. And that's gonna come up later. Everything in this movie comes up later.
Everything does feel almost too tied together, but then there also feels like loose strings, and I don't quite understand how both of those things can exist.
We will touch on this later. The plot of this movie is fucking buck wild.
There's 8 plots.
And none.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ridley Scott tried to take an actual historical event and make a grand sprawling narrative out of it, and you should have just done the gladiator thing and made shit up, Ridley.
Yeah. Well, and he should have known, seeing as he also directed Gladiator.
He got that out of his you have to do one before the other. He got Gladiator out of his system and then decided to go with this.
Yeah. Remarkable choice.
So Balian does a little soul searching. He's still not sure about religion. We get maybe one of the lines that actually I thought would have worked much better in a very different film, which is, "How can you be in hell when you're in my heart?" Um, which I think would have worked great for like a Catholic romance film. Like that should have been in Dante's Inferno, the video game.
No, that's garbage. Boo.
Godfrey's like, okay, whatever. I'm great now. I'm gonna go find my house here. And like he goes to Godfrey's like house in Jerusalem, I guess, and he's like, "Hey, I'm the new Baron," and everyone's like, "Great, you're the new Baron. Do you have any papers?" "No." "Okay, whatever. You've got the sword. I guess that's enough."
Don't they ask him to like describe Godfrey?
Yes, that's true.
Which, like, I can describe so many people's dads that aren't my dad. And I don't know how much credence that would give you.
I like that as like the inheritance test. Like, describe him. That's
How
a pretty
tall
good
is he?
description.
About
Tall.
my height? And what color were his eyes? They weren't blue. Yep. Yeah, you're basically his son.
Yeah, man.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is written in our father's will, Michael, that whoever between us can describe his likeness with more accuracy gets all of this stuff.
I hate to tell you, you're fucked.
Oh, I'm completely fucked.
Great, good.
He's like 5'3", right?
So basically what happens next is we get the entrance of Eva Green, who is Princess Sibylla. She rolls up and she's like, "Hey, give me some water." And there's a very sexy scene where Orlando Bloom like gives her a ladle of water and she like drinks it. And she's like, "Tell Baron Balian that I said hey," or whatever. And it's like, okay, there's gonna be a love interest for some reason here.
For some reason.
Yeah. Balian's steward is like taking him to like meet important people. We see there are two Templars being executed for like raiding an Arab caravan, and it's like, okay, we see that currently, it's Jerusalem is supposed to be treated, everybody's supposed to be treated fairly. We don't want war with the Saracens, and some Templars are not thrilled about that. They go to the marshal's office. They meet Tiberius, who is the marshal, and he explains that Saladin has 200,000 soldiers, and I don't know if Reynald is like the marshal of the Templars, but he's like a Templar big shot essentially, and he has been harassing these. He's the reason that those two guys got hung, because he's been raiding these Saracen caravans. And Tiberius explains, like, yeah, this dude's trying to start a war, and if we start a war, it'll probably go bad for us. We see a scene where Sibylla, they're all eating with the king of Jerusalem, I think. Or no, they're not eating with the king yet. But, like, all the nobles are just, like, having dinner. And then Guy sees that Balian is sitting at the table, and he's like, "Oh, I don't eat with commoners." It's very mean girls. And then he also talks shit about Sibylla. He's like, "My wife doesn't mind when I'm gone. That's either the greatest wife or the worst wife ever. Am I right, boys?" And everyone else is like, "Gee, fuck off, dude. You're so mean."
She's so much more pleasant than you, man.
And then Tiberius does like give a toast. And he's like, "To the best of wives." And like that actually was maybe the best moment emotionally in the movie for me. Just like, hey, it's all right. Sorry, your husband sucks.
Sorry, Sibylla.
Sibylla takes Balian to the king of Jerusalem and explains that her brother, from a young age, was diagnosed with leprosy. And he wears a mask because the disease has, damaged his face. And, she noticed like very early on, or actually Godfrey noticed early on, that he couldn't feel pain. And that's how he got diagnosed with leprosy. Which is true. Apparently one of the symptoms of leprosy is losing, is a neuropathy.
They also mentioned that like dude's a war hero from very young age, that like he won a very important battle against the Muslim armies. And I do want to point out that a lot of the stuff that they use to describe with King Baldwin is correct. Like he did have leprosy. He did do the battles. He also was a decent ruler. He didn't just murder a ton of people all the time. I have very low standards for what makes a okay king versus a bad one, because those sucked.
I think it's funny that you felt how accurate the portrayal was, because I actually was kind of stricken with how inaccurate it was about Baldwin and Sibylla in particular.
Oh, they did her so dirty.
Well, actually, like, I feel like both of them, because they almost like effeminized Baldwin in a way that I was like not super comfortable with. Like, I kind of felt like I was in 300 with Xerxes, where I'm like,
it's very queer Cody in a bad way.
Yeah, kind of like limp wrist queer coding, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, he used to be this badass ruler, and now he's like, you know, this frail, like kind of soft king. And they made it seem like Baldwin and Sibylla like adapted to the culture of Jerusalem rather
Which is just
than
not the case. Yeah.
Right, like it's just not the case. Like they like really tried to like make them feel vaguely Middle Eastern in their culture and their dress. And that's like textually just not what happened in any of the Crusader states, but especially among the ruling class. Like, they were very Western European.
Yeah, the Wikipedia specifically points out they were trying to make Eva Green be like a sexy Middle Eastern, like, you know, by dressing her in scarves and headbands, like trying to evoke that like exotic Middle Eastern woman, which is very gross.
Yeah, media, stop doing that. Media, hey, I know you
sucks.
listen. Media, don't.
It gave me like Liz Taylor's Cleopatra, where it's like, did none of you really just think for a second?
I am very excited because the Balin Baldwin interaction is superb in the director's cut. It's so choice and good.
I mean, I like it particularly because Balian is taught chess by Baldwin, and as somebody who used to be the 77th best chess player in the United States in the year 2003, between the ages of 9 and under, I really liked the chess scene. I really thought it was fun. He's like, the whole world is in chess, Balian. You got to learn to protect the king or some shit, but also you got to protect your pawns. Think about it. It's a metaphor.
Have you heard of those?
I absolutely love this scene, specifically because, like, as they're jumping between them playing chess and having these conversations, they jump to just Balian talking to, like, weird cuts that fade in and out of different conversations they're having, and then Balian's, like, looking at, like, a fake castle, and he's like, so I would put the ramparts here, and at this point, I would do this. I've only ever been a blacksmith. And then at this point, this would happen.
They say in the director's cut early on that Balian did fight in some wars. So he used to be an engineer, so like technically I guess it makes sense.
I like how basically the director's cut was like an extended retcon.
Yes,
where they
exactly.
were like, all of the things that we did not explain, we are going to explain in painstaking detail.
But I just love, like, it feels like a budding romance between the two. And to me, that plays so much better than any romance that does exist in the film.
Yeah, choosing Sibylla, like especially Sibylla as a historical figure, because she was kind of like raised to be a ruler. She really wasn't all that interested in any of her husbands. Like, historically, it's almost a script flip because it felt like Sibylla was marrying men to cement her status as a ruler and to make sure that she had an heir so she could be queen of Jerusalem when her brother inevitably succumbs to leprosy. And for them to like make it like you're in this loveless, miserable marriage. Nah, it was a political marriage. She never liked him that much anyway. Like, this isn't about love, it's to get her pregnant.
But she also, like, stuck by this dude, despite the fact that, like, everyone hated Guy. Like, Guy, as a historical figure, was despised. And I do think they do a good job of making him an absolute terror in this.
Well, okay, she sticks by him until it becomes contingent on her becoming the queen regnant of Jerusalem, where the council's like, hey, how do you feel about divorcing him? Got it. I can do that. And she like leaves him high and dry. That's my favorite part is like, while she's princess, while she's like heir apparent, she's like, stand by your man. I am here doing that like loyal wife shit. And like, honestly, there's no record of her ever having an affair or anything like that. But literally the minute it's like, all right, do you want to be coronated or married? She's like, coronated, easy.
Yeah, the portrayal decision in this was very interesting. They took her character and just tried to make the most, like, what makes Balian look the best.
Yeah, I mean, from a storytelling perspective, I get why they did that. But like, you know, none of these movies are going to be historically accurate if they're going to be dispersed to a mass market, especially a mass Western market. But I do think we get some pretty. We're about to get into the Sibylla Balian romance scenes, which are like pretty boring. But we do get. Besides the fact that we get this bit with Balian like irrigating he goes to Ebeline and like irrigates his ditches, and that's like kind of fun. But like we get this bit where she like rolls up and she's like, "Oh, I'm on the road to Cana. Can I stay here for a bit?" And you know, he comes back and he's been working in the fields for a while and he's all dirty. And you know, she comes in and she has like a washcloth, and he's like, "Hey, can you not give me a bath right now?" And she's like, "This isn't adultery, it's washing," which I thought was fun.
That is what Jesus said to the disciples when he washed their feet.
Yeah, this isn't adultery.
This isn't a foot thing.
No homo.
Yeah. We also get a very good burn because like they're just like making conversation, and she's just like, "Oh, the thing about the Muslims is that their prophet says to submit, but Jesus says to decide," which sounds very much like straight out of like a 1990s, like, you know, evangelical propaganda cartoon. But then Balian's just like, "Did you decide on ghee? Got your ass."
It's so wild to me that this film had dialogue like that, and the public response to it was what it was.
I am so upset because not only the public response, there are historians that call this movie Muslim propaganda.
You mean the quote that I found? It's something along the lines of like Bin Laden's version of the Crusades.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Great.
Yeah. That is an actual quote.
Let's see. Anyway, this part's all pretty boring. We see Reynald, who's like the Crusader, like the Templar Grandmaster. I don't know what his rank is. I'm just going to call him various cool sounding titles. We see him raid a caravan, and we see that, you know, Tiberius is like, "Hey, can you guys not try to piss off Saladin?" And the King Baldwin says, "Well, Saladin already crossed the Jordan with 200,000 guys, so we better do something about this." And they're like, "Okay, well, we have to go meet him at Karak." And they get all the cool armies together, and they have a very, very cool scene. I really like this scene of them assembling the army at Karak. But Balian goes out to intercept the Saracens because like all the civilians are still getting inside the fortress. And Balian and his like 20 dudes on horseback go against this like fucking which wasn't actually 200,000. It was more like 20,000 strong cavalry and infantry, etc. But like he charges out against the Saracens alone and just gets obliterated.
It's like if when Aragorn charged at the army
at the end of
yeah, and it's just Merry and Pippin that ran next to him. Like that's the same equivalent of what happened here.
Yeah, that is a similar vibe.
It's very much when like the Rohirrim charge the Oliphants and all the music cuts out, and then we just see horses getting flung through the air. That's what happens here. They get wrecked. But Balian gets captured, and he gets brought before the Saracens, and then, wouldn't you know it, the guy that he saved so many weeks, days ago, it's hard to
hours.
tell. It was hours for us. It's like, "Hey, I remember you. You were nice to me."
They do the same thing, which I thought was pretty fun. Like when Orlando Bloom saved this guy, like didn't kill him, he put his sword like right next to his head and like reflected the light on him. And then when the Muslim army is like, they throw Orlando Bloom's body onto the ground, and then this guy puts his sword right next to him, and he's just like, "Hey,
gotcha."
No, I wasn't the servant. I was the dude in charge. Yeah,
that's such a weird reveal. Like, we do not give a shit about this man's rank, but
yeah. Anyway, my boss is here. Y'all are fucked. Anyway, I won't kill you though.
Yeah. I really love the bit that follows immediately after, though, which is when the Crusader army rolls up to confront the Saracens. There's just like these really, really cool shots of like the Crusaders going into battle with like a big golden cross.
But also combined with the like mirage of the desert.
Yeah, like, listen, this movie is kind of stupid, but like Ridley Scott is a damn good filmographer. I'll give him that much. It looks gorgeous. Saladin goes out to speak with Baldwin, and Baldwin's like, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry that my idiot fucking Reynaud did a war crime. I will punish him. But if you try to start shit with us right now, we're all gonna die here." And Saladin's like, "That's a good point. You better just, fuck that boy up." They withdraw. The Saracens withdraw. And to punish Reynaud, he first does kind of like, I don't love this scene because it's very much like, oh, look at this person who has a chronic illness and how gross they are. Because he says to kiss, he makes Reynaud kiss his hand, and which is like very gnarled and destroyed because of the leprosy. And then he takes like a riding crop basically and beats the shit out of him with it for a bit, which is fun.
Beats the ever living shit out of him.
And then Tiberius arrests him, and then Baldwin falls over, which is just not true. Baldwin was like pretty healthy throughout most of his life, so like this portrayal of him being like, oh, he had to ride all the way out to Kerak and it nearly killed him. Like, that's just not true. But we have to move the plot around long, so yeah, it's pretty clear he's not going to last long.
Right, because, the diagnosis of leprosy wasn't enough to indicate that to the audience. We had to make him a sickly leper as well.
And also the fact that he's put in a golden mask so you can't see his gross, gross face.
Mm-hmm.
This movie makes some choices. As we're saying goodbye to King Baldwin, he is about to depart this world. Would you guys like to know who played him?
Sure.
Edward Norton. Uncredited. An uncredited performance.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
The first Incredible Hulk.
I was gonna say, I can't believe they got the Hulk in this one.
Yeah.
Wild.
What's more wild is that he played it and went, "Nah, don't say I was in it."
You know what? Maybe Ed had the right idea. He's like, this movie's not going to age well. Don't put me on this one.
I'm in a mask the whole time. It's fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to credit me. Just pay me.
Yeah. There's this bit that I'm going to try to gloss over because basically we get to come to the understanding that, Baldwin's going to die. Sibylla's going to become the Queen of Jerusalem, but she doesn't have Guy's support, like his knights. So she's like, okay, if I make Guy the, my true king or whatever, and I don't divorce him immediately, then I'll have the support of his knights, and my son, they have a son, Guy and Sibylla, we didn't mention him, will be safe. And because actually he'll become the king of Jerusalem and Sibylla will become, the queen regent. And like, there's this whole political drama. She's like, Balian, why don't you marry me? Because you're hot. And he's like, no, because then Guy, you guys are going to kill Guy, right? And she's like, yeah, but it's not that big a deal, is it? He's like, no, it is a big deal. So he doesn't want to marry her. Yeah, we also, while all this is going on, we see the shot of this little boy. And like, while they're like getting ready for Baldwin to die, we see him just like holding his hand over a fire, like a burning candle. And it's like, he's got leprosy too. Dang. So that's going to be a problem later. Baldwin dies. Sibylla, there's a gross bit where Sibylla lifts up his mask and like sees his like, face, which is very clearly a prosthetic, like gross look. It's supposed to be made to be look disfigured and icky. And it's like, all right, sure. She puts the mask back on. She's like, wow, this is going to make me act irrationally about leprosy in the future. And she does, because the little boy becomes king. He's immediately diagnosed with leprosy, and she kills him. She pours poison in his ear, and that's how that plotline is resolved.
It's also important to note that it's stated that they believe that leprosy is a curse from God, therefore you will go to hell.
Yes, that's a very important context. That's, this is a movie with a lot of religious themes.
Which,
yeah,
I can't tell if they made the character of Sibylla more or less capricious than the actual Sibylla. Because she seems so, like, as a historical figure, very, like, smart and intentional. And in this film, it just kind of feels like she flits from one bad idea to another.
Yeah, like I don't know. There is something to be said about like, you know, women in history and like making characters out of women that are like always doing like very vicious cutthroat things in order to maintain their power. And generally I like that, but like this devastates Stabila in the story. And like she goes on and like she'll like go and cut her hair and become a nun because she is, or not a nun, but like will renounce her queen, her title of queen, because she is so devastated over having killed her son. And like that's like kind of a boring character choice, I feel.
Right, and it's also like it's another one that I'm like, why did we change this about history when like the actual history is so much more interesting? Like Sibilla actually plays this brilliantly. I know I briefly mentioned it before, but like in the negotiations, she's like, so her brother hated Guy, everyone hated Guy. She stood by him because she thought it would make it look better for like the nobles and like the court of Jerusalem, and or at least that's what contemporaries seem to believe of her. And she decided, okay, fine, my brother is dead. In order for me to become queen, I need to annul my marriage to my husband. I'll do it on 3 conditions. He keeps a tiny little county that's like not all that close to Jerusalem. We legitimize our daughters together, and I get to choose my next husband. Like, for the time, that's kind of a radical set of demands that she got and then became queen. And this film, it's like, well, and you became queen and you have your awful husband and then you kill your son and now you go into mourning. And it just feels like Sibilla exists as a connection of plots in this. And like, main character is love interest. And that's so boring.
Yeah.
They needed her to get to a destination. That's all they cared about.
Yes, she is given only as much agency as she is needed to get Balian's character to his point. It's, you know, it's not fridging, but it falls into the same category of just using a woman to motivate a man, which sucks. I
think they fridged the kid,
yeah.
which is really interesting.
They like flat out fridge her child.
Yeah, weird. Anyway, Guy becomes king of Jerusalem. He goes out and frees Reynald, the Templar guy, and he's like, go on and give me a war. And Reynald's like, cool, I'm gonna go kill Saladin's sister. Which is a little extreme, but it does get him the war. And
can't argue with the results.
Yeah,
I guess.
And, you know, in response, the Saracens send a diplomat, and he's like, hey, why did you do that? And then they kill the diplomat, and they're like, that's why. And then we get the Battle of Hattin, I believe, which is a very funny battle. Balian is positioned as like the grand strategist here, which is very funny because, like we said, he's a blacksmith. But basically, he's like, y'all, if you go out to try to fight the Saracens, you are going to die of thirst. And they're like, no, we're not. And then like 5 minutes later, we get like a shot of like all the army getting very hot and tired and like people falling off their horses and shit. And then the Saracen army just obliterates them. And then we see this field of corpses and like birds like flying around. Balian like rides out and he's like, well, we're fucked. I guess we gotta go defend Jerusalem now because our army's dead. There's a bit where Guy is like one of the only survivors. Guy and Reynald. Reynald is executed.
Can I talk a little bit about that execution? Because that is actually a historical thing that happened.
Yeah, please.
So Guy and Reynald are brought before Saladin, and Saladin offers Guy water, and then Guy passes it off to Reynald, and Saladin looks and goes, "Oh, I didn't offer you that water," and then has someone slit Reynald's throat. And this is, every single culture has this like idea of like, if you offer someone food, that's a hospitality, you can't kill them. Ask Odysseus about that if you fuck it up. And Saladin had like literally said like, I will kill Reynald. I will be the one who kills him. And then Guy just watches like, all right, okay, yep, I'm so glad I took that cup. I'm so glad I took that cup.
Very bread and salt, Lannister send their regards vibes.
Oh yeah. Saladin is a very interesting historical figure, and I actually don't hate his portrayal in this movie, which is something that I was not expecting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think they, there is like a myth around Salahuddin, which is like, he's like this noble, very much like a noble savage stereotype, but like he was also like genuinely like a pretty smart leader that treated with the Crusaders relatively fairly for the time period. I mean, like there are, if you read about the Third Crusades, like him and Richard get into it, and they do some war crimes, but like, for the time period, I think Salahuddin was a very fair leader, but so anyway, basically what happens is, Balian comes back to the city and everybody's like, hey, so our army's dead. What are we going to do? They introduce a bishop character like at this point, and like they're like, the bishop's like, oh, I gotta dip, I'm gonna leave, sorry about the people, but I gotta go, it's the will of God. And then Balian's like, no dude, we're gonna protect the people. He's like, how are you gonna protect the city? You've got no knights. And then we get this scene where he's like, all right, every man here who's not a knight, get on your knees. And does the same thing that happens in the beginning. They administer the oath, and then Balian just smacks this random guy across the face, and he's like, and that's how you'll remember your oath. And he's like, all right, you're all knights, congrats. And then he turns to the bishop, and he's like, we're ready to go, let's fucking fight.
I've always wanted the ability to knight people, because I would hand it out very wantonly, but also like very particular. Like it would be some combination. Like I would probably knight my barista I see every day, but like no one that I actually know personally.
There's a 0% chance Mike would knight me.
Mm-mm.
He knows you too well.
Yeah. Of the three of us, Aaron is the most likely to be knighted.
Ironically. Well, we see the siege of Jerusalem. It's this whole film has been building to this moment. We see Saladin's army like marching in. We see these cool shots of like projectiles being flung into the city. There's like this really good nighttime shot of all these fucking fire projectiles flying into Jerusalem with all these like cool fiery explosions. And then there's like, a good 40 minutes where it's just like Balian doing cool warfare. Like there's a bit where he shoots ballistas with like ropes tied onto them into the siege towers and like pulls them down. It's really fun. We get the classic boiling oil, of course. If you're into fucking dumb action movie like big siege sequences, you'll have a great time. I
just want to make everyone as sad as I am. Boiling oil, not really a thing.
Nope, completely fake. It's so hard to make oil that hot.
Yeah, and also boiling water does the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just boil water. It's gonna hurt just as bad, I promise.
Yeah, it might not catch on fire, but you'll get some people to fall off ladders.
Yeah, it'll hurt. For all of you defending fucking castles out there.
Now
just a little tip from us.
There might be at least one listener who has a castle that they're like, thank you so much. If you have a castle, I would love to stay there.
Michael will knight you.
Yeah, DM me. I'll knight you. I'll stay in your castle. You'll never know I was there.
It's very good. There's a big stand around the Christopher Gate. There's like this one big last cool siege battle where the Muslims breach this gate. The Christians run out and they have a cool fight, and they fight until like the end of the day, and like Orlando Bloom wakes up surrounded by bodies, and like everybody else is like crusty and bloody, and somebody comes out on a horse and they're like waving a flag of truce, and they're like, hey, do you want to talk to Saladin? And Balian's like, sure. Saladin's like, your city can't hold out forever. I've got way more troops than you. Eventually you'll lose the city. And he's like, here's the thing. Before I lose the city, I'm going to burn it to the fucking ground. Your holy places, our holy places, and every Christian knight you kill will take 10 Saracens with him. So you sure you want to do that? And Saladin's like, Jesus, this fucking guy.
Fucking Europeans, man.
God, white people.
Fucking French.
Fine. I won't, even though you all killed every Muslim in the city 100 years ago, I'm not going to do that. I will give you all safe passage back, and it'll be cool. And then Balian returns, gives us everybody the good news.
There's also a fun interaction between the two of them. Do you want to cover that, Aaron, real quick?
The very classic iconic line at the end. So before Balian and Saladin part, Balian turns to, the Sultan and he asks, "What is Jerusalem worth?" And Saladin says, "Nothing." And then he waits a bit. "Everything."
He does a full, walks 30 more feet, then turns around and gives a shrug like, "Ain't I a little stinker?"
I wish, this was actually almost a good line. Because I think there would have been something, glib and ironic about leaving it with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But, one of my issues with this film is it just seems uninterested in subtext. Completely, totally, wholly, uninterested in letting the audience think for a minute. And so when I watched this again and I heard that, I was like, wow, that's the first line that really got me going, oh, this is pretty smart. And then, of course, the shrugs and everything. And I'm like, you can't even give me that. We're 2/3 of the way through my version of the movie. And I'm like, I finally found one line I liked and you ruined it.
Yeah. They're, like we said, this is a flawed film. Yeah, the Muslims take over. All the Crusaders go back home. We see the shot of Sibylla walking, and Balian rides his horse over to her, and he's like, "Hey, a queen never walks," and then it's implied that she's given up her queenship and is gonna come and live in nowhere France with him. And then at the end of the movie, we see Richard the First actually, who riding by, and he's like, "Hey, I'm looking for Balian who defended Jerusalem," and Balian's like, "Nope, I'm just a blacksmith," and he's like, "Well, if you see him, I'm about to go do something really stupid, so let me know."
Well, the line is, "I'm the blacksmith and I'm the King of England."
That's actually really good.
Well, and it's okay, Richard, were you really King of England? You just seemed very uninterested in the whole ruling part of being king.
A lot of time not in England.
Yeah, you literally made your mom do all the work for you. It's kind of embarrassing.
And then pick you up when you got captured.
Get your fucking
literally,
ass kicked by Saladin, yeah.
Go and lead armies on the front line as a woman in medieval Europe.
Yeah.
I am sorry to end the roast session of one of England's most beloved kings. However, there is the quick scene between Balian and Guy where in the director's cut we get a fun little fight between them.
It's
and
stupid. I hated it, actually.
Yeah. Instead of Balian killing this terrible, terrible man who caused countless deaths and endless suffering, he spares his life and tells him to rise a knight.
It's completely useless.
It's terrible. I wanted to bring it up because I hated it.
Yep, it sucked. This film didn't need a director's cut. I'm sorry, it didn't. And then the final scene, we get a little title card that says "Yep." And then the Crusades kept happening, and then we get the line, "Nearly 1,000 years later, peace in the kingdom of heaven remains elusive." Hey, thanks for the fucking great one. Yeah,
You just made a jerk off motion for the audience. Okay, fine.
Fucking every single documentary that ever talks about Jerusalem says this thing. It's such horseshit. It's so annoying.
It fucking kills me.
I need to make a point for those listening. The reason that we hate this so much is because that a lot of conflict in the Middle East is well, there's never peace there. There's always been conflict there. Fuckers, conflict is every place has never had peace. That's literally the history. If you look at history books, they don't bring up the 70 years where things didn't happen in a village. They're like, oh man, and this king killed this person. The idea of violence only existing in the Middle East is used to excuse modern day violence in the Middle East.
Yep, fucking gross. Really fucking wanged on this one, Rid. But just because we think Ridley wanged it, what did audiences of the time think? What are our reviews that we did in our research? What did they say?
So audiences didn't love it. That might be the understatement of the century.
Can I just say one critic, one Roger Ebert?
Yeah, I had Ebert's review up too.
This is just a little thing. He did find that the film's message was a bit deeper than Gladiator.
Thanks, Roger.
Yep.
I have 3 reviews from 3 Christian review sites.
Christian,
which apparently liked it a lot better than your reviews. So, Christianity Today gave it 3 out of 4 stars. I wasn't able to read most of that review because they have a paywall, but I did read the point where they called Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, politically correct. And they liked how this movie wasn't so politically correct, which is very funny.
Have they not read the story of Robin Hood?
Apparently there was like a Muslim character in that show, and like apparently he was like a good guy, so they hated that.
Do they wait. Are they talking about Morgan Freeman?
I don't know. I didn't see Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I couldn't read this review. If you want to pay the fucking for Christianity Today's
not paying
16-year-old reviews, by all means.
I also have a couple of choice reviews. It will not shock you to know that mine are secular reviews. So the Film Journal International, Louis Beale, this just like tickled me. I like saved it, and actually when I pulled up Rotten Tomatoes, I had this highlighted still because I liked it so much. One of the more violent films in recent memory, but maybe the violence serves a purpose. It keeps your mind off the inanities of the plot.
Not wrong.
Yeah.
That tickled me, and then of course. Wesley Lovell from Cinema Site. There's an audience for Kingdom of Heaven. It's just difficult to know where to find them.
Got him.
I feel tickled by those.
Do we have any other notes before we go into our own reviews?
So I have a little bit of stuff that I want to say about this movie, like historically speaking. If you read a lot of like, is this movie historically accurate? Which a lot of those I don't take into much consideration, because for a movie to be historically accurate, for me, you need to get the tone, the mood, the ideas of like what the thing was about, not really were they dressed correctly. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Historical accuracy should not distract. It shouldn't really like, that's the goal you're working with. And a lot of them describe that it does not show the Muslim brutality that existed in the Crusades. And I find that argument to be a little confusing, specifically if you're looking at a European-centric idea of the Crusades. I think it helps to show, most audiences are going to go into the Crusades thinking the Crusaders are the good guys, showing a ton of Muslim atrocities. That's not... Everyone's already thinking they're the bad guys. It does absolutely nothing. However, commenting...
The politics of 2005, did we really need to pile on?
Fucking seriously, yeah. But there's a lot of stuff written about how well, they didn't mention that the Muslims killed all of these people. I will also say I would have requested a few more comments on how the Crusaders killed a ton of Jewish people, a ton of other Christians. When they took over Jerusalem, Christians, Muslims, Jewish people all fucking toasted. Just killed them all, because fucking why not? And I guess a lot of historians that wrote about this at the time period didn't really care, and it's probably because it was 2005 and the anti-Muslim sentiment was through the roof in this nation. So I want to say Ridley Scott could have made a much, 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 much worse movie. Yeah. This movie could be so much more terrible, and I am very happy that it is just bad. And that, I'm glad it frustrated some people. I am glad that the last Christian review I read called it anti-Christian propaganda. I don't know how they got that from that movie, but I'm glad. Maybe it got a couple people to think whoa, maybe there's another side to this story. But yeah, if you are looking for historical accuracy, just know it does not exist, but it might help to read about it anyway, because you might find a more interesting story.
And with that, what are our own reviews of Kingdom of Heaven?
I'm going to give it 1 testicle. I'm so happy I got to do a big speech about my ideas of, where America was in the early 2000s, the anti-Muslim sentiment that was in our media, and then give this movie a rating of 1 unpunctured testicle.
I'm going to give it the 3rd Station of the Cross, Jesus Falls for the First Time. I think that there's definitely a big stumbling block in the way that it portrays a lot of just everything, historically speaking, wrong. But it gets there in the end.
I am going to give this 2 out of 5 Crusades because I think it was pointless, and I think we may have all lost the plot collectively.
Fuck, I didn't even mention the fact that Orlando Bloom teaches the Muslims how to find water in the place that they've lived for thousands of years.
Oh, good. Yeah.
God damn it.
Lightsaber bullshit. Yeah, we love to hear it. Anyway, are we going to do something better next week? Do we have any ideas?
No, we're going to watch the Book of Eli, motherfuckers.
Okay, yeah, hell yeah, that'll be fun. So look into that.
Yeah, and just remember, October's coming up, boys.
Fuck me running.
Fuck. All right. How do I not exist in 1 month, but exist in the next?
We have a special spooky season plotted for all of you, so stay tuned. And like last year, I'll give you a taste for my birthday, so I won't have the next pick, but I'll have the pick after. So you'll get a little breadcrumb.
Good. Well, if people just can't get enough of all of our great brands that we exhibited on this episode, where can people find us on the internet?
I am at Green History on Twitter.
I'm at Michael's Diamonds on Twitter.
I'm at Aaron SXL on Twitter. You can listen to the other podcasts I do at Mortified Pod. Me and Layla just watched the classic anime Cowboy Bebop, and we had a pretty interesting discussion about it if you are interested in that, so go ahead and check that out. Well, gentlemen, while I personally am weeping in anticipation of Michael's spooky season, just remember that it is okay to cry, because even Jesus wept. We'll see you all next time.